And welcome back to another edition of the MLB Inside The Diamond podcast. I'm your host, Tom Johnston. I'm joined by LaMarr Fields. How you doing, brother? How's your week been?
Been pretty good. Yours?
It's getting better, getting better. I got some moving parts to a lot of things coming up. So hopefully, this month is going to be a blessing in disguise. So first things first is we're going to talk and dive into the MLB All-Star game because believe it or not, it is happening next Tuesday. And I first want to break down the All-Star game in general. I do know that the stars have been announced, and first and foremost, congratulations to the Texas Rangers because they lead the entire MLB with 4 starters, and I believe they have a couple first-time starters as well. In fact, they have 3 first-time selections and a second set and 1 second-time selection, and then there are others in the pack that have like a fifth-time selection like Aaron Judge and a 10th time selection like Trout. But overall, LaMarr, whenever you look at who made it from both the NL and the AL starting wise, who surprises you, but who do you think actually got quote unquote robbed of potentially starting in the All-Star game?
Uh, the stars really surprised me. All having really good seasons. Um, Names you probably didn't expect like Diaz and John from the Rangers, but they all having good seasons and on some good teams. I'm trying to think who really would surprise me that they're getting chosen. Um, Not really surprising because the fans vote for the starters, so it's not really surprising. I'm waiting for the reserves and the pitchers.
Hmm.
That's when you can see who probably got snubbed.
Well, let me ask you this question then. Do you think it like and I know this can come off a bit contrary, but do you think it's great that the fans get to vote, or do you think it should be purely based? Or let me phrase the question this way: do you think the fans vote on performance wise, or do you think fans more so vote on who they like the most at player wise?
Probably lean towards who they like the most. But baseball's All-Star voting is pretty good. I'll say that it's not as bad as what the NBA used to be when they used to put Penny Hardaway in when he only played like 3 games in the first half of the season. They would vote him in the All-Star game. I don't have a problem with it.
You see, this is kind of something I kind of get a little frustrated about whenever, not that I got a problem with fan voting. I want to make that clear, but when you vote for, say, the person you like versus the reason the All-Star game is there, I'm a firm believer that, fans should be voting for who deserves it the most. And by that, it's like performance-wise, because, let's put it this way, okay, and I'm not singling out any particular player, but my whole thought process is there could be fans out there voting for somebody that statistically probably wouldn't make an all-star start or even make it to an all-star game based off of their performance that year. But since it's in the hands of the fans, and the fans voted based off of popularity, I tend to have a problem with that because to me, the All Star game should be about not who you like the most, but who is performing the most because it is an All Star game. You're voting based off of performance. Who rightfully deserves to be there, and not that I necessarily have a particular issue with, anybody that got selected. I mean, it's a congratulations to all those guys that are starters and the fans voted for them. I know Texas is having a phenomenal year, and it goes to show, 4 starters that have been selected. I mean, that's really an accomplishment. There's not a lot of MLB teams really put forth that effort. There's sometimes where you're lucky just to get one representative because there should be, I believe, there's a rule that says there should be a representative per each team. But whenever you have 4, that tells you something about how your season's going. But if I'm honest with you, I think that if there's one guy that I think got snubbed of maybe starting, it probably is Jordan Alvarez of the Houston Astros. I was looking at things and I'm just like, this guy's really, having a great year. I don't have his stats off the top of my head, but whenever you look at the Astros and who they play against, Jordan is a guy where you really don't want to throw him anything that's hittable because he has proven this year and in years past that, he can make you pay in any sort of way. And to see him not starting, I just kind of feel like he got snubbed in a way. I mean, the
And he's
Astros,
a designated hitter.
no, I don't know.
No, was he a designated hitter, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Or
And how you gonna start if he a designated hitter over Otani?
that's the part that I don't.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Otani, the designated hitter. Ain't
yeah,
no.
but I'm not sure if Jordan was.
He can play out. He could. He can't play outfield. He can play outfielder too.
Yeah, but that's
But
my whole point, though.
is he
I
starting
mean,
over? Is he gonna start over Trout, Aaron Judge, and
well, let's
Randy?
put it this way though. He
Yeah,
actually he could have a legitimate chance to do that because Aaron Judge, even though he's
yeah,
voted in, he does have an injury that,
yeah,
I mean, let's be honest. He's been out since the series against the
yeah.
Dodgers because he injured his toe, which we'll get into that in a few. But I just think, just based off of I, I can't see the AL without Jordan in the lineup, but that's just me. It's just he's a guy you look at, and no matter what, he's just. I mean, give Grant though the reserves are going to come in and everything, but I think that that's a guy that the AL would like one in a starting lineup because he can with a swing of a bat be the difference maker between 2 runs and 4 in the span of a swing, but yeah, but getting into that, I want to touch on this too because I think that this shows a little bit of how good Shohei has been and how good he can be. My first thought to you is LaMarr is: do you think Aaron Judge is going to be out for the remainder of the season, or do you think that his injury is going to heal on its own?
It's hard to say because there ain't really not much coming out for about it. Uh, why my gut says he'll be back.
I,
Hopefully, I mean it'd be good for baseball if he come back, but who knows how long it's out for? It's not really been much said about it. They kind of hush hush on it. The Yankees say one thing, he say another thing. So it's one of those situations where you never know.
I think he's coming back. I just don't think that they have a definitive timeline for 2 reasons. For one is they want to see if this injury is specifically going to heal on its own. And if it does, that's great. But in all honesty, I don't think that they really want to go the surgery route because, even though there's a possibility that they may or may not, it's just this is where it's a nice opportunity for the Yankees and stuff to really be transparent about a few things and go from there. I mean, it never hurts to. But at the end of the day, I can understand why. They don't want to have the fear of people saying that X, Y, and Z things aren't going to happen, and I get that. But at the same time, it's better to be honest and transparent with your fans than to keep them guessing, and then all of a sudden, oh, we've been waiting for Judge to come back for so long, and yet, no news has been reported. It's just like, and I like this because there's a podcast I was listening to today, and you know, this couple that does it, the lady, her name's Andrea. She says all these baseball writers, and I agree with her. They tend to stir the pot, and it's just like, how about just ask the honest questions, and how about the teams just get the honest answers? I mean, great if he's going to be out for an extended period of time, that's great, but like, don't sit there and say it's day to day if it's going to take 2 months because day to day does not equal 2 months. Day to day is more like it's something that could probably recover within a week or maybe 2 weeks at max. But it's kind of scary to see him not in the lineup. The Yankees have honestly been struggling a little bit in some areas without him. I could tell he gives a big boost to their starting lineup with him in the lineup, but with him out of it, I mean, granted, it gives other guys opportunities to play, but it's just Judge is such a big name for the sport of baseball, and it's tough to not see him in that lineup. But it's hard to say. I mean, that's going to be an interesting look at the All-Star game. Sure, if he's out and they got to find his replacement, then maybe it's a spot where Jordan steps in. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now, touching on the Yankees, and keeping the subject on them. So Domingo Germán threw a perfect game earlier this week against the Oakland Athletics, and there's been a lot of interesting tidbits about Domingo Germán's performance. And this is the same guy who had like a 10-game suspension for having a substance issue with involving pitchers and this, that, the other, which probably shouldn't have happened, but it did. And the Yankees are monitoring his rosin usage and this, that, the other. But based off of what you've seen about that perfect game, what can you describe that makes Domingo Germán really good as a Yankees pitcher?
He struggled his first two starts. Or two starts prior to the perfect game, he gave up a lot of runs. I ain't got the stats right in front of me, but I remember read somewhere. I think he gave like 8 runs or 7 runs or something like that. He got some good stuff. I mean, you saw the perfect game. He got a good stuff with some movement, some breaking balls, some nice movement. Granted, it was the A's, but a perfect game is still a perfect game. Let's see what he does his next start. See if he can. If that perfect game pulled him into being the starter the Yankees want him to be, which is a top level starter. So it was amazing. Only 99 pitches for a complete game with 9 strikeouts. So that means he was throwing a lot of getting the ball over the plate most of the night and not getting deep in counts, and A's wasn't fouling off a lot of pitches. But yeah, it was a great start for him to see what he can do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I really like that analysis. I think that really sums him up. But I would also like to add, I don't know if a lot of people notice this, but Domingo Germán's a guy that doesn't really rely on a fastball a lot. Like he's really a breaking ball kind of pitcher. He likes to throw sinkers and sliders and changeups, and he really likes to take a different dynamic approach. And while most pitchers, they save their breaking pitches for like, the odd counts and to get guys ahead, this guy comes straight at you with a lot of it, and I think that that's what really makes him unique. But it also puts him in a different category for a lot of things. And it's actually interesting because I did find this crazy stat from a few sources, and it's kind of crazy how he's pitched 62 consecutive starts where he's thrown less than 100 pitches. And I think that really tells you a lot about him. I think it tells you a lot about, where he's like how he goes about pitching. He really just has a plan to go after these hitters, and he really doesn't like to waste pitches, and ironically on his perfect game, he threw 99 pitches. Now, it's beyond me why somebody would even keep a stat about that, but I also find that stat unique at the same time because to go 62 consecutive starts and doing that, and if it ends there, that's great, but that in and of itself is a phenomenal stat because it goes to show that he really game plans, and I guess he really works on prioritizing his breaking stuff and his off speed pitches to really want to get the hitters off balance. I think whenever you're a pitcher like Germán and you do that kind of stuff, you really set yourself up for a lot of success in the future because then it really gets the hitters guessing. Because whenever you show that your fastball isn't your dominant pitch, even though it is a dominant pitch of his, but he doesn't really rely on it all that much, and he goes to his breaking stuff. As a hitter, it catches you off guard because then it keeps you guessing more about what breaking stuff you're going to see. And seeing the few starts that I've seen him actually pitch in, I could tell why he is where he's at because of what he does and how he does it. And I think that that's really a thing that makes him unique. It's really something that, because a lot of hitters, whenever they look at the breaking pitches, they look for something to like, get a nice double out or, get ahead or, even hit a home run for that matter. But Whenever
Hmm.
you can master your breaking pitches like that, that really sets you apart because it's like, okay, well, my fastball is good, but I don't necessarily need to rely on my fastball to really keep ahead with these pitchers. I can keep them guessing with a lot of off speed.
Yeah. And the off speed pitches got was working, then set up for an unbelievable start.
Oh yeah, and like I try to tell people, give grants the Oakland Athletics, but still, a perfect game's a perfect game. Like the last time MLB actually saw and witnessed a perfect game was Felix Hernandez in 2012. Since then, and think about it, all the great pitchers that have actually stepped foot on a rubber and have pitched, it has been over a decade since we've seen a perfect game. So I think that that tells you how rare it is, but more importantly I honestly also think that it tells you how how like on your game as a pitcher you have to be. Like, because I know after a couple innings, people are going to start saying, oh my God, he's retired 9 up, 9 down, 12 up, 12 down, the whole 9 yards. And, it's that mental battle to where it's like you can't focus on just retiring the hitters. You have to focus on, just making your pitches count and getting your hitters off speed and making them guess instead of having them know. And I mean that's tough to do. I mean the best pitchers in the game, there's only been like what 24 of them that have done it. So I think that tells really how on your game you have to be.
Yep.
Now, this is another interesting fact that I found through some research and listening to a few other sources talk about this. It's been the first time since 1961 the Reds have hit three game tying or go ahead base hits in extra innings with three rookies. And what can I say about these Cincinnati Reds? I think what the Pirates have done and what the Reds have done actually shows you how quick things can turn around in any division in baseball and with that team. The Reds went on a hot streak. They've called up three rookies that have really been like contributing well to the team. And all of a sudden, from where they find themselves in the bottom dwellers of the NL Central, now are up there in first place. And a team like the Pirates that, for the first 2 months were making noise, and now it's all of a sudden they find themselves where many people thought that they would be 2 months ago, and now they're there. I mean, it's interesting to see how this season's going to turn out with Cincinnati. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm interested to see based off of where the Reds are with their rookies. I think it's a crucial time for their rookies, especially like Ali De La Cruz, to
Hmm.
really get this experience because then it helps them not only progress and develop more, but that's like, okay, well, we're getting major league experience right now. This could really be the catalyst between the next 3 to 5 years to, really find ourselves in a situation where we're going to be picked to win the NL Central or we're going to surprise everybody and win the NL Central. But I also think it's because of they've been able to beat teams that say the Pirates have not. Like, that nice little 9 game losing streak the Pirates went on where like I said, the Cubs and the Brewers were probably two of the more predominant NL Central teams that the Pirates should have beat that they didn't. And goes to show that, hey, it's great to beat up on the Cardinals and the Reds, but can you really beat up on two other divisional opponents that really matter? And it's hard to say. I mean, right now the performance is saying otherwise, but who knows? I mean, we still have time and we still have baseball to be played.
Yeah.
And then here's another interesting one. Nelson Cruz turned 43 yesterday and recorded a hit. Now, first off, happy belated birthday to Nelson Cruz. I mean, that dude, I love the way he carries himself and stuff like that. But then he's the oldest player since Barry Bonds to actually do that, and I think that that goes a long way to show like the longevity of the sport. But more importantly, it goes to show, hey, Nelson Cruz he still has something. I mean, because teams are still willing to have him on their team, whether it's because of veteran leadership or whatever the case is. But that's very interesting for Nelson Cruz and stuff like that.
Yeah. Nelson Cruz, man, been doing it for a long time.
Oh,
Nice
he
to see.
had.
Nice to see him still out there.
What are two? If you had to pick the top two reasons why Nelson Cruz is probably still in the major leagues, what would it be?
One definitely because you love playing baseball and you're getting paid for something, and you get paid for something you love. That's a win-win situation.
I think it's due to how he carries himself, but more importantly, his leadership. His
Yeah,
production. It and I'm not here to knock on a guy that's a seasoned veteran by any stretch, but
yeah,
whenever you stay around like Nelson Cruz does, it's often because there are organizations and teams that value your leadership, they value what you bring to the table, and it's not necessarily thing, but I also think it's because it's a very coveted spot that he can have as a DH, and I think that that really pays dividends for any team. And I'm happy for him. He's still sticking around, and he's still producing, even though it might not be as the at the levels he once produced at. Some production is truly better than zero production at all, and that's honestly the way that I look at it. But I mean, getting paid for what you do is nice, but I also think it's more about what he brings to the table, leadership wise, and his extensive knowledge of the game. And I think it's going to continue until he really decides to, hang it up and retire. And I think whenever that day comes, it's going to be a sad day for baseball, but it's also going to be a great day for him because, he's going to be able to do bigger and better things for him and for his family. Now, we're going to touch a little bit more on the All-Star game because now that I broke this down a little bit more, there are overall 9 players that earned first ever All Star selections. So in the NL, we have Sean Murphy of Atlanta, Luis Arias of Miami, Orlando Arcia of the Braves, and Corbin Carroll of Arizona. What are your thoughts on each of those, and what do you think particularly led them to actually? What do you think the fans seen in them, maybe besides popularity, that notched them their first NL start?
good young players, and their teams are winning. I mean, you got the Rays in first place, um, Diamondbacks in first place. That Corbin Carroll, he's pretty good. Um, I think the winning aspect played a lot in them getting spots. I mean, you go the winning team, and it's get rewarded if your team is winning. You having a good season. I think you should be deserve to be in an All Star game.
Absolutely, I
Mm,
think
mm,
you're spot on. I think it also has to deal with their production on the field, and I mean, give Grant your team winning and being where they're at is great, but I also think it really has a lot to do with production on the field and how you're going about doing that in a lot of regards and stuff like that. So I mean, I think a lot of those play hand in hand. I mean, give Grant nobody actually seen the Diamondbacks being where they're at and being in first place, but I think Corbin Carroll plays a huge role into that. I know he's one of their up and coming stars on that team, and it's great for him. And I'm happy for him, and I'm happy for all these other guys. It also helps that the Atlanta Braves are currently in first place in the NL East and stuff. Now, transferring to the AL side, now you have Jonah Heim of Texas, Yandy Diaz of Tampa, Josh Jung of Texas, Corey Seager of Texas, and Randy Arozarita of Tampa. And I can almost guess, like, I get why these guys are there. Texas is having a great year, and people do deserve to get praised for that in a lot of ways, and I get that. Um, but it ultimately doesn't even shock me why a lot of Tampa Bay players are there too. Tampa's having a phenomenal year. I don't think nobody's seen it coming what type of year they're having. But I do suspect that there might be a cool down on the other side of this, just because teams are. Because I kind of take this back to last year with the New York Yankees. A lot of
yeah,
people were so up on New York, and then all of a sudden they kind of cooled off after they had like an insane winning streak, and then everybody was calling for Aaron Boone to get fired, and then all of a sudden, I remember putting on social media, what would you rather do? Would you rather have the team have a cold streak in the regular season, but still be in the playoff hunt? Or would you rather the team be hot all season long and then all of a sudden, they get a first round exit in the playoffs and then you get more mad? Like, which would you rather want? I would actually go with being hot, having a cold streak in the regular season, and at least go into the second or third round of the MLB playoffs versus being hot all season, and then all of a sudden you get your first round exit, and you're just like, what in the heck happened? But it's just like, I don't honestly think a coach should be fired or a manager should be fired for a cold streak. I mean, it's going to have to happen. I mean, plants need water to survive, and if it's always too hot, then, I mean, it's just, it's going to be one of those days where you might not have a lot of plants, and it's just like, what the heck?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, both the Rays are up 6.5. The Orioles lost four straight, starting to falter a little bit. Uh, Rangers and Rangers up 5 games over the Astros. I think they play today, so they got a chance to bump that up to 6, or Astros will cut it down to 5. So I mean, still playing good baseball. And, I mean, Rangers got a good manager. Rays got a good manager. I don't see them slumping too bad. I mean, they're gonna level out a little bit. They 5-5 in the last 10, but everybody's about 5-5 and 6-4 in the last 10, except for Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, that's true. I
It's crazy. It's crazy to see how some of the stuff is so even. You look at the last 10 games; everybody's around 5-5, 6-4, 3-7. Yeah, it's crazy. 4-6.
I wonder if the schedule makers knew something we didn't, or I wonder if there's like some secret formula they use to like, say, okay, this is how, like, I mean, I'm not saying they can predict that, but my whole point is like, it's kind of crazy to see how a lot of teams correlate with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There's one other interesting fact I want to point out, about Aaron Judge, because since he's been absent, Shohei Ohtani has actually hit 15 home runs
Yeah.
in his absence. And the crazy part about that is the Angels are on a bit of a losing streak. They've lost their four straight, not necessarily against the Diamondbacks, but they have lost their four straight in a series that's against the Diamondbacks. And I want to know this. Where do the Angels really go from here? I know that there's a lot of pressure on them, considering that hey, if like we don't win, there's a chance, and I'm not saying Tony's focused on next season. He's focused on, probably producing and, wherever it goes is where it goes. But, what do you think overall just has to happen?
It's tough, man. Got to get more pitching, I guess. I hitting all these home runs and great, and outstanding, best player in baseball and all that, but they're starting to falter. They lost four straight, and going up against one of the Diamondbacks' best pitcher today, it could be five straight. I mean, I Tony's putting up great numbers, but if you ain't winning, it's pretty much empty stats.
I totally agree. I
I
mean,
mean, it sucks because he's phenomenal, man. Must see TV, but kind of like how Barry Bonds was on some of them years on the Giants, where he's doing all this, but the team's not winning enough games to go to the playoffs.
do you think that there might be pressure in the fact because now that you actually said that, this thing popped in my head. Do you think that there's pressure because Trout and Otani are seen as the face of that franchise, and it's just like if there's not somebody else, like another two or three players that step it up, that the pressure's just on them to really produce. But like you said, though, they need to get more pitching. I think Arte Moreno and this organization, they need to really focus on getting pitching. And we've seen it time and time again throughout this entire season where your pitching can show up and they can throw gems, but if you have no offense, do you think that that's part of the issue that hey, they might be relying too much on Trout and Otani, and they need to get somebody else like another batter to in there and also get some pitching to
I,
help level it off.
I mean, they got looking at the stats, they got enough pretty decent enough bats. Tony got 30 homers. Hunter Renfroe got 14. Trout got 17. Brandon Drury got 14. Tyler Ward got 9. And I mean, but then you go down to their pitching, it's like just pretty much just Otani. I mean, they drafted a lot of pitchers, but they're gonna take a couple years to develop before they can start. Yeah, Patrick Sandoval 4-7. That's that's not gonna cut it, man.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah,
Never have a surplus of pitching on your team. I mean, pitching's everything. I mean,
yeah.
even if you give your pitcher like one or two runs of support and they have great stuff going in that game, that can really be the difference maker. But from my experience with analyzing MLB all these years, you can never, ever, ever go wrong with enough pitching. I think that's their issue is they might have enough hitters, but where's your pitching? You need pitchers to step it up. And, you know, it makes me wonder if they're really going to be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline. I don't think you get rid of Otani, but I think you really just try to press forward and you try to buy pitchers at whatever cost. But hey,
Yeah, they drafted a lot, so hopefully the next year or two they start calling them up and they can be successful. Help turn the Angels around, man. You got probably two of the top 5, top 10 players in baseball, and they ain't seen the playoffs.
mhm.
I mean,
Trout hasn't seen it since 2013, and that's the only time you've seen it.
yeah, I've been the best player in baseball for a while, and it's baseball is a game like that.
I mean, but that
Ultimate,
stinks though to be.
ultimate team sport.
Oh, it is.
You could be the best player in baseball and not be team around you not that good.
I wonder how that makes Trout look now that he signed that long-term deal and like they show him, yeah, like this is what we plan on doing. Like, not that everything goes according to plan, but like this is what we plan on doing, and the whole 9 yards. But like, it's like, what is it? Like, what else is there?
Yeah, and Trout been pretty much healthy for the most part of the season too. So I mean, I don't know, man. I like to see them get in the playoffs and make a run, some type of run, man. I just don't know if they can try to maneuver and get a couple starters for a trade deadline that could help them. Definitely would help them, but you got to see who's out there.
No, that definitely would help him. The last thing we're going to touch on, because I know that this is a famous day in all the calendar, but more importantly, it was Bobby Bonilla Day yesterday, where the Mets, continue their annual $1.19 million payment to him, and I believe they're on track to pay him until until 2035. And I don't think this is something that gets a lot of attention, but there's a lot of benefits to deferred compensation for both sides, but I don't think it gets talked about a lot. Like, for example, one benefit is that there's a lot of tax, like positives to it in a long stretch, but you don't want this to be like a long-term thing with a bunch of players where you sign them to long-term contracts and then you get rid of them and then you work on deferred compensation because it costs you more in interest in the whole 9 yards. But, at the end of the day, I mean, right now it's just not a good time to be a New York Mets fan. A lot of Mets fans are taking it hard that they're tanking in a lot of ways. And I try to keep the spirits up and say anything is possible at any given moment, and stuff like that. But, you know, allow me to say this. Bobby Bonilla was a great player in his time, but I mean, it's got to be great to be Bobby Bonilla every July 1st because you're collecting another $1 million+ in deferred compensation. That's got to be nice to really put that money to work and allow it to multiply in the whole 9 yards. But do you think that based off of certain past situations and contracts that there are teams out there that are learning from like long-term contracts to avoid deferred compensation.
I don't know. I mean, it's up to I don't know. Deferred. That's a good contract for Bobby Bonilla. If you feel like you can space it out, get $1 million every year July 1st, I would do that.
Well, I mean,
Unless
don't
you
look
have
at
money for,
Owen,
yeah,
who's a multi-billionaire who could probably afford it. He could probably
yeah,
pay out the rest of the contract right to this day.
yeah.
But
I don't know, but you don't see too many deferred contracts though. It's only not too many out there. A lot of people
yeah,
want their money up front. Yeah,
I mean, let's put it this way, though. I mean, there's like I said, there's a lot of there's a lot of good and bad to it. But I mean, I think it all depends on the situation and what really warrants it. I think that in the whole scope of it, there are situations where it warrants it. I just don't think, like, from an owner's perspective, that a lot of owners think like, oh, this is good for business, because it's really not. I mean, deferred compensation and having to pay a guy with interest, and it's just like, oh yeah, well, because originally, for people that don't know, he was getting paid 10 million a year, and then like they started only paying him 9 million, but then they worked it out to where that they would pay him that extra million some change every single year for a while. And it's just it's always a historic day in Major League Baseball for that.
yeah.
Well, you got anything more to add?
No, not really. Oh, the Met situation. I want to add on that. I think he should give it a couple weeks, and I think he should trade. He should trade Verlander and possibly Scherzer. Trade them both.
Who would take on their contracts though? Because those are two big contracts he
Two
had.
big contracts. Somebody probably would take them on. People trying to win.
It's true.
I talked to the Angels. They known for taking on contracts. So,
that's
so my situation is,
that's true.
I mean, somebody I dangle them out there and see if anybody bite. Verlander just pitched great against the Giants yesterday. But I would throw it out there. If we ain't going to the playoffs, I'll throw it out there, get some farm system back, build my farm system back. And he ain't got no problem spending money. So then you go out there and go be a big spender again next year on the next free agent. So that way you got money and you got a replenished farm system.
Hey, Angels, if any one of your fans or somebody by any chance listens to this, that's a good idea. Just throwing it out there. Not
I
that
don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know if they're gonna do it though. I mean,
some team will.
Ver,
Some team will see the value.
they throw him out there. Verlander, they all up there in age, but pitching a little bit better as a late. So I wouldn't mind the Giants going to get one, but they got the money to do it. Why not?
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the MLB Inside the Diamond podcast. For LaMarr Fields, I'm Tom Johnston. We'll see you guys on the next one.